This is the Remote Works Podcast, discussing the opportunity, culture, experience, and community surrounding remote work. I'm your host, Jonathan Sharp, and this is episode 14, where we go virtual reality with Doghead Simulations. This episode is sponsored by the Managing Remote newsletter. If you manage a remote team or organization, receive a weekly summary of the best content and news related to successful remote teams. Sign up at managingremote.com. So kicking off episode 14, I have a personal announcement to make, and that is at the beginning of May 4th, my wife and I welcomed a healthy baby boy, James David Sharp, and he was born 7 pounds, 8 ounces, and all is going well. We're getting enough sleep, and I am grateful that I work from home as I had the opportunity throughout the day to interact with him and hold him and just get to know him. Again, I'm grateful for remote work and the opportunity that it provides to be close to family. So let's jump into the interview for episode 14. So I'm here today with Chance Glasco and Lily Snyder from Doghead Simulations. And this episode is really interesting to me because we're more or less talking about the future of remote work and where things are headed, and a non-common way to work remote, which is virtual reality. So Chance and Lily, welcome to this episode.
Hey, thanks for having us.
It's great to be here.
So Chance, why don't we start with you? Just give us a quick sentence or two of who you are and what you do.
My name is Chance Glasco. I guess I'm technically kind of sort of still a game developer, but I'm not working on a game right now. But I've worked on I was one of the co-founders of Call of Duty and Infinity Ward. There was 22 of us that left together and formed the company to make Call of Duty, and I worked on that for about 12 years and got sick of it. Quit, moved to Brazil for about a year and a half, started Doghead Simulations while I was in Rio de Janeiro, and now I'm back in Orlando. I should be here for at least like 6 months or so. So I actually grew up in Florida and then spent my game development years in Los Angeles. So I'm returning to Florida and seeing how it's changed. So it's all good.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's a little warmer down there today than it is up here in the north woods of Wisconsin. So
I wish I was in Wisconsin instead right now.
And Lily, how about you?
All right. So hi, I'm Lily. I'm currently the COO of Doghead Simulations. My background, though, is in IT consulting. I implemented manufacturing execution systems. So I've been a remote worker since 2013, but when you're implementing manufacturing solutions, you have to travel a lot to those plants. I was starting to look for something new to do, and that's when I started talking to Matt Chacon, our CEO, and he told me that they're working on this virtual reality project, and I wanted to get involved. So that's how got into cool. VR. Yeah.
So how long has Doghead Simulations been around?
We're still pretty new. We've been around since July last year. So July 2016.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So still very fresh, very startup. That's great.
Yeah, so, almost a year.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, virtual reality, I think most of us have interacted with it with some form of Hollywood version of it, either a hacker movie or, The Matrix or something like that. How would you guys describe virtual reality, and what's kind of the boundaries for that term?
I would say that virtual reality is fooling your brain into thinking you're somewhere else. Using a mix of a stereoscopic image, high refresh rate, high resolution screen. So it's, a lot of people, when you try to describe it to them, they haven't used any of the new technology. They just can't figure it out. But honestly, the best way to describe it is describing reality. It's kind of like a digital version of reality. If there's any people out there that spend a lot of time playing games, imagine now instead of looking at a game on a small screen, you're actually inside of that environment. When you turn your head, it renders exactly what you expect to see. It's very immersive.
Okay, so it's really all encompassing. You like you said, you trick your brain into believing that you are somewhere else, and really you're not necessarily there. It may be just in the ether.
Yes. I have kind of a story to describe this. Last night, my friend's 4-year-old son was over, and he calls virtual reality being inside of the computer. So he was playing this game, and he figured out if you pulled the trigger and there was a water hose and you pointed it at the ground, flowers would grow. But he didn't want to step on the flowers that he was growing, and so he actually got confused and tripped over backwards and fell against the wall because he got scared he was going to crush his flowers. Even though we could see he was clearly, in the middle of the room and there was nothing he was going to step on.
Yeah. Yeah, but really the experience was so real for him and immersive that he fully believed he was there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we've hit this point with the technology where we actually are starting to get presence. And presence is basically where your conscious brain knows that you just put on an HMD, a head-mounted device, right? But your subconscious brain is getting all the right information that it's starting to say, hey, I'm actually here, right?
yeah.
And so in the past, when you had, this 1990s VR, I'm not sure if you ever tried any of that. It was horrible. It was like a 30 or 40 field of view, maybe like 30 frames a second. The resolution was like a Nintendo per eye, basically. So there wasn't enough information there being given to your brain for it to buy into it. And now with the newer PC desktop-based VR headsets like the Oculus and the Vive, it's gotten to the point where because the resolution is so high, the refresh rate, stereo audio, all these things come together and your subconscious brain says, hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
Even though your conscious brain is like, no, I'm not here. So it's this kind of weird, kind of in-between state. And we also have something called social presence, which is really great. For instance, in Rumi, when you look to your left and you hear someone talking, you talk to them back and they respond, and it's 3D positional audio and you see their body language, you're getting actual social presence, the feeling of actually being next to somebody. And that's something you don't really get out of, traditional video conferencing.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of the technology in 1995 to today. What has really progressed within, let's say, the last 10 years in terms of this technology? And are we at that point yet where you feel like we've achieved, okay, this is like broadly applicable, we've really hit a stabilization point, or is there still a lot of research left to kind of get us there fully?
Go ahead, Lily.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that's going to help us get there and that's showing that we're getting there is 360 video. So we have these kind of 3 different technologies right now. We have 360 video, virtual reality, and augmented reality. So 360 video is here now. You can get a camera. Anyone can do it, and it's really easy to create content for it. But you can view it on a mobile device in a virtual way.
Yeah.
So being able to create content, the everyman being able to do it, is what's going to really help drive this forward now. So that's why we think that's great.
And I wouldn't even, that's content that a lot of people are going to be using, but at the same time, 360 video isn't even VR. It's basically a sphere where you're projecting a video on it, and you look around, you're going to look at different parts of it. So you can actually explore it. And so unfortunately, a lot of people have used 360 video and they think, oh, that's virtual reality. Yeah, you're using a VR device to view it, but with with 360 video, you can actually explore that environment. You're kind of stuck at one point, ingesting whatever was actually recorded by that camera array.
So really, it's kind of like you mentioned these 3 kind of separate technologies that are merging a little bit: VR, 360 video, and augmented reality. Going forward, is it really the merging of like 360 video for content creation and VR for resulting in something that's kind of like Google Street View, except way more immersive?
I would say 360 video is more like Google Street View. That's the direction you'll probably see that going.
Okay.
But VR is actually, you can actually walk around in it because everything you see is typically an actual 3D model device, right? So if I walk past it and I look at it, it's going to render it differently. With the video, it's basically, like I said, you're inside of a sphere, and you've got a 360 projector that's projecting out at all parts of that sphere, but there's no depth to it. It's just hitting that paper sphere that you're inside of, and you're seeing a flat image. But they do have 3D 360 video, which is kind of like two spheres, where it'll have depth, but you still can't move around in it.
Okay. So as far as the hardware in what has come out recently, the Oculus Rift was, I think, made a ton of news, and I'm sure that there were many others that didn't get quite that amount of publicity. But in terms of hardware requirements, do you feel that we've reached the point where we have enough hardware and power that we've reached kind of critical mass where we can go very broad with this technology, or do you still feel like we're a couple years out from really perfecting it?
Yeah, so the hardware is going to always be improving. I think we're seeing already the costs coming down. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
We're seeing starting to see that mass adoption for early adopters with the hardware. And as it keeps coming down and keeps getting smaller and faster, we'll definitely keep seeing more adoption.
Yeah, and for instance, to get into, like, say, a Vive or an Oculus and run it, if you're to buy a laptop, which, understand laptops are more expensive, you could spend now about $1,200 and get the laptop you need. When these devices came out, around a year or so ago, you're looking at about $2,000 or more for a laptop. And a desktop, especially if you order the parts and build your own, you can build a PC for probably $750 that'll run most VR experiences. Yeah, I mean, you have to be a little handy with your spending there, but it can definitely be done. Definitely under $1,000.
Well, that's really achievable. And I mean, I think even 10 years ago, you hear about some of the high end systems, and they're like $3,000-$4,000 systems, and you're dropping a lot of money. So $750 is really that's an obtainable price point for the majority of people.
Yeah, it's definitely accessible by, I'd say, at this point, the middle class and up, maybe even, less than that maybe. So yeah. So what are, in terms of internet connection, what are the bandwidth requirements for really participating in this? For Roomy in general, or VR in general, or Roomy in particular?
I'd say VR in general, if you're assuming that you're connecting in a collaborative way.
Yeah, there's no, VR in general, there's no particular bandwidth requirements because it's just software. We don't know what the software is doing. Is it even based on the internet? Is it a single user experience? So it could be zero or it could be a lot. But for Roomy, I think when I was in Rio, I only had like 15 down and 3 up, and I was okay. So we know that it's really low.
Yeah. So it's not like, we're not talking again like, Google Fiber or something.
It's exactly what you need to use, like Skype or GoToMeeting or any other conferencing software.
Yeah.
We actually went to a pitch competition in Beijing and ended up running our demo off of our phone's hotspot since we couldn't get on the Chinese internet. Yes.
That, I think that's the proof in the pudding right there. If you can do that.
Yeah, if anyone's already working remotely, the odds that they wouldn't have the internet fast enough to run Roomy is very, 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 very small, unless they're basically working remotely and only getting like text transmissions or something,
Yeah, they're on dial-up still.
Yeah, dial-up. That would be a problem. You could probably Roomy with one person using dial-up.
Yeah. Great. So the first part, we've kind of talked about some of the technology and where that's at. And then in this part, I've got some questions related to really what is the experience in terms of, you've used some terms such as rooming and that type of thing. So I'm a person working remote. I know what virtual reality is. What is the experience that Doghead provides, as well as just the remote collaboration? What are the pieces to get this all to come together?
Definitely. Rumi is the name of our VR software. So that's
okay.
Yep. So use Rumi, kind of like Google it, join a Rumi.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So what we wanted to do was create kind of an office environment, a meeting room environment, maybe a war room that you would use with your teams in real life, but virtually. Because we found that a bunch of our team has worked remote and we became frustrated, with teleconference calls and dial-in numbers and
yes,
video calls. We see all this other technology evolving and getting better, so why not upgrade the way that we work remotely too? And that's kind of what led us to virtual reality, to be able to create this same type of office space that we'd need in real life, but do it virtually since, people work all over the world nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, Albert, our CTO, and I were prototyping a game because we had met in Germany, in Cologne, at an event called Gamescom, which is kind of like E3, but for Europe. And he was working at HTC as a senior prototyper on the actual Vive itself. I had been not working, kind of just chilling out in Brazil for about a year or so, ready to do my next thing. And we started working on this VR game it's called Bear Tender, where you're actual bear serving animals coming into a bar. And it was really goofy and ridiculous. But we realized how difficult it was to actually collaborate over video conferencing. It hasn't really evolved. And so Matt, who was good friends with Albert, was saying, hey, you guys should probably fix that problem. And so, imagine like you go to a VC, you go to an investor and you tell a VC, hey, I've got this idea, this teleconferencing idea that's going to revolutionize the way we communicate, right? And they're like, okay, cool, I can listen to that. Or you go to a VC and you're like, hey, I've got this idea where you get a chinchilla drunk with a giraffe and you pour him shots of Jack Daniels. It's going to be amazing. Yeah. Give me your money,
Maybe in 1999 you could have pulled that off.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sure this would be huge once the technology is, I guess, even more mainstream than it is. You have millions and millions and millions of people experiencing VR. That's when you need to launch something like that. But because Rumi can actually save your business or your organization thousands of dollars from not flying for all these meetings, people can justify to go out and buy the hardware and the PC, because just for the PC and the hardware, that's like one business class trip to most places in the United States. If you go to LA to Chicago or New York or Atlanta, that's maybe one trip, maybe two at the most.
And it probably doesn't even include the cost of food, which is always
exactly. Otherwise, you're competing with, oh, honey, I want to buy this expensive hardware because I want to get an animal drunk.
Right. Yeah. That's going to be a hard sell.
Can you make this $1,500, this almost $2,000 purchase?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, my wife and I have some horses, and I think if I came up with that excuse, she would be like, no, you're going to buy me a real horse.
Yes.
So I do. So in terms of what type of hardware would I need, and what are is there like a standard setup, or is it very vendor specific at this point still?
Our software is device agnostic, but since we're still in the early startup phase, we've been testing and confirmed that it works on the HTC Vive, but it will be able to run on the Oculus Rift, the other headsets that come out. We also have a straight up desktop mode, so you can use it in a 2D way, navigating more like a game on your computer, so that if you don't happen to have your headset with you, you can still join and participate.
It actually already does run in Oculus. It'll be running in Oculus for the next early access release. So like Lily said, Vive, desktop, and also Oculus Touch, so you have your hands. But as far as PC requirements, our min spec recommendation would be a 1060 GTX or higher, which is going to be the slowest, or not the slowest, but one of the slower of the new generation of the NVIDIA cards. But we've actually managed to run it on a laptop with a 980M. So
Oh my goodness.
yeah, so it's working on the 980M right now, which is a older GPU, and I don't know if it'll continue because that's not our goal is to run on that. It's actually 1060 or higher. But if you do have a 980M, it will work for the early access program.
Yeah. So I get the hardware device and I install Rumi, and then how do I join a company per se?
Yep. So it's basically 2 clicks. You would enter the company name or the meeting name of the space that you'll join. For instance, if you're going to meet us in Rumi, you would just type in Doghead Simulations. Then you'd click Join Meeting. Unless you wanted to update your avatar, and then that's another click of the button.
Spend a little time there making
Yes.
sure that my hair looks right and everything.
It's important, yes.
It is. So the thing I think that's a benefit though is that if I get up in the morning and I haven't brushed my hair or something, like I'm still going to be presentable.
Exactly.
So, so what are in terms of the life cycle of where you're at with the product? Is this subscription based for an organization? How does that all play out?
Yep, it's a subscription base of $49 per person per month.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yes.
And the first 3 users are free. So if you have a team of 2 or 3, then you don't have to pay till you get over 3.
Okay. Excellent. I love that. That's a simple pricing model. Sometimes you need a statistician to actually determine what something's going to cost. So
You do. There's like 5 different tiers, and depending on your users or how cool of a company you are.
That's right. That's right. And then when they start asking, what's your revenue? And you're like, wait, why does that matter what I'm paying?
Yeah.
So, okay. So then in terms of the office space itself, so I've got my headset on, I've joined my company. What am I seeing on the walls? Is there like decorative art that I can put there? How does that all work out?
You first spawn into our lobby space. It's wood floor, expansive window vista views. And so there is where you can meet your other team members, and from there you'd split off into the different meeting rooms that we have. Once you get into a meeting room, you have interactive walls where you can, we have a whiteboard, so you can brainstorm and whiteboard ideas. You can pull in 2D images or 3D objects to manipulate and collaborate around them.
Oh, cool. And so as far as like the design of the office, is that something that Doghead Simulations, is it like a standard office right now? Or are there like custom designs, or if I want like a very cool Silicon Valley, like hipster startup office, is that an option I can select from?
Right now we have the default lobby and meeting rooms, but in the future we will support other meeting rooms, other lobbies, possibly even support custom environments for certain companies. We also have vistas, which, so for instance, when you spawn into your lobby, you look outside and there's, right now we have kind of like a majestic snowy scene, right? With mountains and everything, some birds. And so we could actually swap out your vistas as well. So you're saying, okay, well, I wish my office was on a desert island today or something. You could swap that out.
I see a lot of potential for company culture there in terms of like, okay, everyone showed up at work today. Where are we going to be? Are we going to be at the beach, or are we in the mountains?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could even, for instance, like tie the amount of wildlife you have out in your scene to how many bugs you have in Jira if you wanted to. There's so many frolicking bunnies. We have to destroy these.
That's right. Or what? There was what was that movie where all of the alien bugs came? And
Star something. Stargate?
Yeah. It was totally Star something, but
Stargate.
Yeah, if you just implemented those bugs as proportional to Jira bugs, then we got to fight this back. We're going to become overrun. So
yeah, so some of the, I guess, more common tools that we have in our meeting space would be the ability to have a shared web browser. So if you have anything that's on the cloud that you want to bring up, you can bring that up in the web browser. Shared desktop. So let's say you want to do a PowerPoint presentation. You would, tab over to PowerPoint, bring that up, and then do your presentation in VR. Everyone's seeing exactly what you have on your screen, which would work for Office, would work for any desktop application, can be actually streamed to all the other users as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're actually streaming like my local desktop screen
Exactly.
into VR. That is cool.
Yeah. Also, Jira, which, for those who don't use Jira is the world's, most popular software for bug management and task tracking. Tons of software companies use this, and you can actually do your own stand-up meetings in VR, moving around the Kanban cards, and it's all tied into Jira. So when you're moving these around in VR, it's updating your database in the back end.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That is cool. So in terms of size of the company, like how many concurrent people can you have in one VR space right now?
We're officially supporting up to 20. Honestly, I don't know if you'd want to have 20 people in a meeting, because typically once you get even close to 10, it's not going to be quite as productive.
Yeah.
But typically we're meeting, typical meeting with us is usually like 6 people or so.
5 or 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we can support more. It's just once you get a lot more people in the scene, we have to add features that give you, for instance, the ability to have a leader that can say like mute the entire group and unmute the entire group. So that you still have a barrage of audio being sent around.
Yeah. So it's still like real life. You get way too many people in a room. Yeah. Okay. And so where is Doghead Simulations at in terms of the life cycle of this product? Are you at the point now where you're accepting early adopter companies? Are you working with just a few select clients? And what's that look like going forward?
Yeah, well, we currently have an early access program. If you go to dogheadsimulations.com, there's an early access button on the front page there, where you can have free access to our current build until we go live. So we have over 100 users right now participating in it, so it's pretty exciting.
Oh, cool. That's great. And so do you have like a timeline or a roadmap now that you're looking for, or that you can share publicly with going forward? Or are you just working towards milestones?
Q4 of this year, sometime in there. We're not saying specifically, but we're targeting a Q4 release.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But like Lily said, go to dogheadsimulations.com and you can use it for free up until then. So no reason to wait to pay. You might as well start doing it for free.
Yep.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you so much, guys, for the conversation today. This is definitely the cutting edge of work. And it's exciting to think about how remote work is going to change and grow going forward in the future. So I appreciate the time, and thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. This section of the show is called What's the Buzz, where I call out interesting products, articles, or links related to remote work. So for this episode, the Google Jamboard is the What's the Buzz. It comes with about a $5,000 price tag, and they're labeling it kind of a whiteboard / hangout combined. So if you can imagine a large touchscreen display that gives you the ability to remotely video conference or hangout location, and you can share the content on the screen. Now, what makes this different from a regular hangout is the fact that you have some stylus type markers that you can draw on this whiteboard type surface, and it syncs it in real time. And it gives you that collaborative experience. Now, at the $5,000 price tag, it's cheaper than some of the other options that are out there. And you can pull in different things such as web pages or screen sharing and that type of thing into this session. So it's definitely something interesting, and go check it out. We'll put a link in the show notes. Reviews are one of the great ways that we have a chance to connect with our listeners. So from time to time, as we receive reviews, we will call out to them on the podcast. So today we have a new review from Rover4 on iTunes, and they said, "It is really nice to hear from others, especially how they were able to start working remotely. Keep up the great work, guys." So thank you, Rover4. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to Matthias Gontijo, who hails from Brazil. Matthias has been a listener from early on in the podcast, and he just took a moment and dropped me an email saying he appreciated the podcast and to keep up the great work. So Matthias, thanks so much for listening, and thanks for taking the time to drop me an email. Thank you for listening to the Remote Works podcast. This podcast is only half of the conversation. The other half is from you, our listeners. Your questions and feedback are appreciated. Leave a voicemail at remote.works/voicemail, and it may be incorporated into a future episode. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or others. Please take a moment and leave a review when you subscribe. Be sure to include your real name and mention your website or social media link with the review, and we may incorporate it into a future episode. The show notes with links to resources along with the transcript of this episode is available at remoteworks/14 for episode 14. You can recommend a guest or topic for the podcast or sponsor an episode by visiting remote.works. Finally, until next time, go be awesome. Thank you for listening. This is the Remote Works podcast. This podcast is a production of and copyright Cultivate Now. All rights reserved.